Live from the Wiley's garage. It's Wednesday night. I don't think that's good.
Oh man, no! Put it on do the 2 second transition.
No.
Yes, it's like a love song. It's fantastic. Look at that. Oh, it's cute. Oh, that soft fade. All right, Kellen doesn't appreciate it.
I disagree with it.
Hey, welcome to the Gathering 208 podcast. We are glad that you're here with us and hanging out. As always, if you want to be part of the conversation, feel free to comment or post below, and we'll get to your questions and comments. And we're glad that you're here and hanging out with us because we've got Lani Nelson with us. So, yes.
What's up, buddy?
How's it going, man?
Good. Things are good.
Nice. Lani is he is a shipping space supreme overlord.
I am.
For
that's
ocean.
The technical title.
That's the technical
says it on my
supreme
business card.
overlord
Yeah.
For Ocean Network Express.
Yep.
Right. And also, in my opinion, more importantly, worship director for Gathering 208. So super pumped to have him on the couch with us. I do want it recorded in perpetuity that Kellen didn't want to sit on the couch with us.
It's a lot of guys on one couch.
We got the long couch though, man.
There's a lot of man here.
It's like an 8-foot
There's
couch.
a lot of man here. I was hoping for like a chair like Conan O'Brien, and I'm Andy Richter, and
Sit off to the side.
I can sit off to the side.
We were gonna do it, but it meant.
I thought
Just
this would be
bask
like
in
a
the
night off for me.
testosterone. Just enjoy it.
Well,
I haven't seen you guys forever. Come on.
We gotta hang out. I was going to, but it meant building like another 8 feet of backdrop so that you don't see my nasty shelving and deep freeze in the background.
All I hear
here
is
in the garage.
excuses. So.
And I didn't get around to it. So yeah, we are all scrunched together on the podcast couch,
Breaking
out
social
in the
distancing and all that.
really badly.
We're in phase one. We're all right.
We're in phase 1. Well, I mean, we're technically in Boise city limits, so
You didn't hear that.
no, we're 4 blocks that way in Garden City.
Yeah, we're Garden City.
No, welcome to the podcast. If you're with us, and we'll pin a comment below about. Feel free to comment or ask questions as we go along, and we'll get to them. I've got the iPad here so that I can see them as we go. Would love to have you part of the conversation because we are joined by Lani Nelson, who we asked him. Like 4 weeks ago. No, this is week 7. So I think like after week 1 or 2 of doing the podcast, we were like, hey man, do you ever want to like co-host? And I believe you said something along the lines of like, heck no.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember that conversation ever happening.
No, you don't remember that?
So we either blocked it out or it didn't happen.
Kellen and I have been
Because I was
joking
like,
about
hey,
it.
you should do this instead of me sometime. You're like, I won't be in front of the camera.
I'd rather be behind the camera than
I'm
in front
always
of the camera.
if I'm in front of the camera or people, there's always a guitar in front of me, and so I'm feeling very vulnerable right now.
He was asking for the safety pillow earlier.
Yeah.
Where's the safe? Need a little security pillow.
Well, man.
Hey, Lani. So for everybody out there in Facebook land, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and like who's Lani? What's his life look like? What's his family?
Well, I'm a Leo. I'm not single. Sorry, everyone.
Taken.
I'm married and have a 2-year-old awesome little kid. Like, literally, he's like the coolest thing in the world. I love walks on the beach, romantic walks, hand in hand. I love fishing. I love music. 29 years old, and yeah.
How
That's a little bit about
pumped
me.
are you for Disney releasing Hamilton on Disney Plus?
You know, I've only listened to the soundtrack about 83 times, so I'm not that big of a fan. But I'm pretty excited. I actually don't know the story. I just know some of the music. So and I'm not gonna pay like $200 for a ticket. You know.
I'm not sure if not knowing the story says more about your inability to extrapolate the lyrical themes from the music or your lack of knowledge on U.S. history.
It's a mix of both. I didn't do too well in high school, so.
Anyway, so
But I passed. I got my diploma. So
that's right, you passed.
Whatever.
That's all that matters, man.
I don't need to know history.
Oh man.
Oh
Man, I sounded so dumb.
I don't need to know
okay.
history.
That's all right.
We're just taking that soundbite and we're going to release it all on its own.
We'll fix that in
over and
post.
over again.
It's all right.
There is no post, but it's live.
Yeah. Oh shoot.
So tell us a little bit more about you, not just the things that for those I don't know if we were. I got nothing, man. I just got dating jokes in my head.
How did you get into ministry?
I knew I wanted to be in ministry actually at a very young age. My brother was a worship leader at a church when I was like 6 or 7. And so watching him on stage was really cool. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to be on stage and I want to, help people worship and just kind of be in this environment. So I did that. Actually, I didn't start singing until I was in like the 7th grade. Like I wasn't like a singer in school. I mean, I was in high school and stuff, but I didn't really play instruments. I just always knew like, oh, I'm going to be a worship leader, and then didn't put any of the work into like learning instruments or singing. So in 7th grade in youth group, they're like, hey, you want to come sing lead the worship band? I know you like music. I was like, I don't know how to play. And so then I just started doing it one day. And then from then on, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then I went to NNU. Shout out to NNU. Sorry, I still owe you like $80,000. But
maybe they'll see this and forgive it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
That shout out, man. That's worth $80,000 right there.
Well, thank you for sponsoring this video. And so I went into music ministry, and I went 5 years at NNU, and I still don't have my degree in music. There's one science class that I failed, and so I'm 3 credits away from. So when I get my degree, you get your money. And
You get an honorary degree
Is it
now.
a lab science too, or is it like a?
No, it's anatomy and physiology, the actual class. I got the highest grade in the class in the lab, and then one of the lowest in the lecture.
I took anatomy and physiology twice in college.
It's
because it is such a ridiculous class.
Yeah,
I mean, it's tough. All you nurses out there. Because I had to take the anatomy and physiology at a school that specialized in nursing, and that course kicked my butt. So I feel a little bit of your pain, at least on that level. But oh my goodness!
Fun fact, though, the last semester of my 2nd year, I didn't pay for it. I just kind of went. I just showed up, yeah, because I was living on campus, I was working on campus, and then all my music teachers were like, if you just want to come to classes, you can just go. And then we didn't tell any of the leaders or whatever. And I went and traveled with all the music groups, and I was just kind of a ghost that went. So take that. And then
I thought we were trying to get him to sponsor the video.
oh yeah, sorry. You didn't hear any of that.
Let's be honest. The administration from NNU is not watching right now.
Yeah, they're not. They could care less.
Anyways, ministry. So you don't have your music degree necessarily.
No.
But that didn't stop you from doing ministry. From
No,
from
yeah,
leading worship.
when I was in college, I started working at a church and got my local and district minister's license, and was a music intern. And I've been a worship leader / worship pastor at a few different churches. And yeah, that's what I love. It's what I'm inspired to do. That's what I'm called to do, and I know it. And it looks different at every church I'm involved with. So like, it's never really looked how it looks at this church. Like, this is a whole new animal, like this church here. But that's what's exciting
That's
about
a good
it.
thing.
No, that's a great thing. Like,
Church is an animal.
This is
man.
horrible.
because like churches are always like really set in their way, and it's like, you're gonna come and you're gonna do this, and this is how the congregation likes it, and this is how we're used to it. With Gathering 208, it's like, hey, let's actually come together and figure out how to how to like execute this in the most efficient manner to create this atmosphere of worship that we want to create. And that's really fun to me. And that's one of the things that I'm really excited to do with you guys, is just to kind of build literally from the ground up.
I hit the mic.
Oh,
He's just smacking things.
Don't mind me.
Smacking equipment.
Erica was
I
laughing.
thought, yeah, Erica's laughing. I thought
Erica's laughing at me because I hit the mic.
I was being sincere. Why is she laughing at me?
No,
Kellen doesn't mic drop. He just backhands.
I just backhand.
So tell us about a little bit of, when you talk about creating this atmosphere of worship, like what's some of the things you think about with that? What's important to you? What is that? And I know that we're almost talking about the intangible, but also the philosophy and theology of worship and church, and there's a lot wrapped into that.
Yeah, and growing up, I always thought, okay, worship meant music, and just kind of trying to get out of that mindset of like, worship isn't. I had a roommate in college who hated worship music, but he's like a great Christian. But he hated worship music, and he hated the fact that I always played worship music. So he experienced God in like listening to like the Philharmonic, or like going to the mountains and doing all this stuff, and that was how he worshipped. And I could not wrap my head around that for the longest time. So getting out of that of like, worship isn't. I don't know when the church started making that connection where worship meant music. But there's two. I think it says somewhere in Matthew there's two parts of worship: the internal and the external. Externally, you go and you worship at church, and you raise your hand, or you sing, or you dance, or you play music, or whatever. That's how you externally experience worship. But that means absolutely nothing if your heart's not right. If you're not experiencing that on a deeper level with Christ, then you could go to all these worship services, and if it's not rooted in the love of Christ and your connection with Him, you could go to church for 20 years and never actually literally worship and never be in that. So as a church's job is to really just provide that place where it is easiest for the congregation and for the person to slip into that deeper connection with Christ, where they're actually feeling they're in the presence of Christ, and they're not just here to sing or to sound good to their crush or to impress other people, but it's really rooted. And that's kind of why, like, I'll do worship services or like play worship songs at my house, and I'll just play like 3 or 4 songs, but I'm in tears at the end of it. And I'm not even able to sing because it's all about being in the room with God and really experiencing it with Him, and what is He trying to teach you in it. So you could worship with no music. That's what worship is. It's just that connection. And so how do we provide that atmosphere? What elements do we use externally to build the foundation for the internal connection? And that's kind of how I think of my job and my duties as a worship leader or worship director or pastor.
I love that, because it doesn't limit the scope of what it is to be a worship director or a worship pastor or a creative arts guy or any of that to just the realm of music, or even the realm of necessarily just creation. Like I think that when we create something, because God is ultimate creator, and so that's almost us reflecting back part of His nature that He's instilled in us, right? Exactly. His ability to create music and to create art and to create even environments.
We're outwardly expressing the inward connection that we feel.
And I think there's something powerful. The way I like to, I think we've talked about it, but worship and like a Sunday service or that gathering of people should be the immanence and the transcendence of God, right? The idea that God is here and He's close and that we are connecting with Him, but also the idea that He is holy and He is mighty and He is the creator and the sustainer of all things, right? So there's this immanence and transcendence and sitting in revelry of that. and you talk about like just being brought to tears when you're really in that environment. I love that. I love that idea of worship has to move. The idea of worship and the life of worship has to move beyond just a life of, top 10 Christian radio or what's the new worship album. And I love new worship music. But there's definitely, you can definitely get locked into an idea of what that has to be.
Well, my biggest fear is like what you'd spend, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on a sound system and lights and all this stuff, and you have the biggest rock and roll worship show every Sunday morning, but nobody is connecting with Christ and nobody is multiplying and there's no discipleship, there's no growth, that's my biggest fear, is because I don't want to get too wrapped up in like sometimes I'd rather just listen to someone who is authentically playing an acoustic guitar and worshiping over like an empty show,
It's almost like, when you're just doing a show, you've moved from being a worship band to being a Christian artist cover band.
Right.
And I've heard that as a critique of modern worship.
There's nothing wrong with those. Nothing wrong with those, but...
No, and there's nothing wrong for aiming with excellence either.
Yeah.
But the heart has to be right, is what I'm hearing.
It has to be. It has to be a mixture of all of it, because if one piece is missing, it flops. And if it's not all working together cohesively, it's ineffective. Not saying that like if it's not perfect, it's not effective, because I'd rather listen to an imperfect, authentic person than an auto-tuned show. I'm repeating myself, but that's just my biggest fear of how do we be authentic in this and build growth and still also be as professional as we can. So it's tough because you're never going to please everyone. That's the hardest thing with you guys know that being pastors and stuff. There's no matter what you do, there's always going to be someone upset. So you kind of have to find that balance of, and then also just the trust between you as a leader and your congregation. Because if someone's upset that you do something, or you sing something, or you preach a certain way, if they have that mutual respect, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and they're going to be like, okay, well, let me try and think of it from his perspective. What is he trying to say? Where does this come from? Rather than, oh, he said blah blah blah. So it's kind of a whole part. It's not just we're the leaders, you're the congregation. We're going to do this and we're going to do what we want. It's a team effort, and the congregation is part of that team, is the biggest part of that team, I think.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. I think about even just some of my own experiences with talking with people and worship. I some of the most powerful moments of worship have just been a group of pastors or a group of church leaders sitting in a basement, with someone's got a guitar and that's it, and everyone's just singing. And the person to the left and right of you are a half step off in either direction, right? And or either that, or I'm a half step off and have no idea what's going on, which is usually the case. But it's still powerful.
I love that. I love hearing someone sing off key.
Which is why you when you hear me sing, you're like, I like listening to you sing, John.
Because you know that person knows that they can't sing and they don't care. And I think that's such a powerful stance of like, it's easy for people who can sing to sing out loud or to sing louder, but when you hear someone who knows they can't sing and they're just belting a worship song, you know that it's authentic. Because it's affecting everyone around them, but it's not affecting them. So, not saying if you can't sing, whatever.
So let's talk about your journey and your call a little bit, because you felt called into ministry and into specifically worship, and went to school for that, and then you were at a church where you were a local pastor on staff, right? And but you're not at that church anymore. right?
No, that was years ago.
That was years ago, and you've been working full time for Ocean Network.
Yeah, for about 5.5, 4, somewhere around there, 5.5 years.
So let's talk a little bit about that journey. What does that look like? What kind of took you through that, or where you've been? And
so it's an interesting journey. Because like I said, I've always known that I wanted to be in ministry. I always known that I was called to do worship. What that looks like has changed over the years. Originally, going in college, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a pastor at this church. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to be on staff. I'm going to get connected. We're going to develop these things, maybe, and then when I was at that church and I was I had my license. I was a dumb kid. I'm still trying to figure stuff out. I ended up surrendering my license, and knowing I was still called at the time to worship ministry. I didn't know if it was full-time ministry or if it was just on the side or lay ministry or just being a part of a church, because you don't have to be a pastor or on staff to do ministry. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of walked away. Not walked away. The vision of that kind of changed for a little bit, and then I started working at Ocean Network Express. And I mean, I honestly love it there. I don't know if you like it or not, but I like it. I actually like it there a lot. And I was like, okay, cool. So I can be a part of a church and work full time here, and whatever. It's great. It's the perfect balance of things. And then over the last maybe 2.5 years, there's been this little nagging of there's something more that you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to just be in this office building for the rest of your life. You're supposed to be building stuff. And I actually noticed that the first time I felt that was when I was at a Crusader choir and orchestra concert at NNU, and the conductor is someone who I admire a lot, and just watching him conduct this orchestra, 150 people on stage, really reminded me of what am I doing with my life? I am not. Because when it is easy when you're working in the secular world to not really have the reminders to, be in the Word or pray or things like that. It's easy to kind of slip in and out of those disciplines, and so that kind of punched me in the face. I was like, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to direct a choir or create music and bring musicians together. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So since then, it's kind of evolved, and then I think even when I met you. Or I was telling you a while back,
that was June of last year,
something like
that when we met.
And I told you hey man, I've been feeling this call to ministry, and I think I was don't tell anybody, because I'm gonna keep ignoring it as much as I can.
Yeah.
Because I'm scared and I don't want to talk about that. And then I think you were hey, I just told Josh. That I was oh, okay, well, I guess we're going down this road. But then it was cool, because it was okay, because ever since I told you guys this, ever since we first came here to the first team meeting we were ever part of, we left, and both of us as separate. Me and Jordan, we left, and we at separate times both had the aha moment of, this is where we're supposed to be. I don't know what that looks like. We just met in this dude's backyard. I don't know what we're getting ourselves into, but this is where we need to be. And so that was really cool. And then so kind of evolving into okay, I'm accepting again that that God is needing me to do a little bit more and be actually a worship leader or director or something that has taken most of my focus, because that's honestly what I believe I'm here to do.
Well, and I think what's interesting too, and to answer your question, I actually do really like working at Ocean Network. It's a fun job.
If any of our supervisors are watching, I
don't imagine
we love it there.
but no, it's a good job. It's good. It's a good company, and I've actually I'll admit when I first got out here, I was super hopeful that I would just be in full-time ministry right from the get-go, right? Which is like, Josh was asking me the other day, he's like, is there anything that hasn't gone the way you expected or something like that? I can't remember how he worded the question. Unmet expectations, thank you. And, but, there was some, I was naive a bit, and hopeful that I'd have a full-time job right, with the church plant right away. But other than that, there's not really unmet expectations. But, it's what's been really good about or been a lot of fun at Ocean Network is some of the questions that have come up, some of the conversations that have come up. Because I think people realize, like, wait a minute, you were working at a full-time job at a church with an income, but you moved out here just to work at Ocean Network? Like, I had no experience in the logistics industry, but it's opened up some conversations that I think as people have gotten to know me, they have felt comfortable having certain conversations.
Yeah,
right?
I feel like you've kind of become the pastor of our office.
Maybe, I don't know. that might be pushing it, but but no, it's been really good. I mean, I think we've both had conversations with different people, about their faith journey, the good, the bad, and the ugly, unfortunately. And I think, in the role that you're in at Ocean Network, you've been there, 5-6 years or so, give or take. People know who you are. They know you're a good dude, and you're somebody that is easy to talk to. So, yeah, I mean, it's something where it's becoming more common. Josh and I have talked about this. It's becoming more common now in our culture for pastors to be, they don't call it bivocational anymore, Josh. What's the term?
Oh, they don't?
Co-vocational.
Ooh, interesting.
Which is weird.
It's kind of a choice as opposed to a necessity, I think, is some of the thinking.
So, it has its, it has its benefits being where you're at, but yeah, it's one of those things that, Josh and I have talked about. You can kind of see, doors opening, and maybe God is calling you to that, full-time ministry again sometime in the future. Who knows? Obviously not right now, but
yeah, that was something that I always noticed of, like, people who I didn't really know at work would stop me and be like, hey, this has been occurring a couple times, and I'm an atheist, but I feel like it could be God talking to me. Like, what do you think? How do you interpret this? And I'm like, well, you know what? Do you ever pray? And they're like, no, I've never prayed. I don't know how to pray. It's weird. It's awkward. And so we got to talk through that with this person who I don't really know, in a place that is not really a place where you talk about prayer and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's been those little times of just being able to be that person for someone, because I've never been like a Bible thumper or anything like that, but even just people knowing that you have a faith and a background, in ministry, they come out of the woodwork sometimes, and that's great, and that's always been a reminder to me, like, okay, what are you saying to me? I know you're kind of hinting at something more, so it's just, I'm stubborn, so it took me a while to finally accept it.
Why don't you guys tell me a little bit about let's talk just about that idea of being co-vocational ministry, where you're working on being a pastor, and also, in this full-time job, and a very, Boise is a very, I guess, secular place. It's not like a lot of places in the U.S. where you go and it's like everyone's part of a church, or that's just what their family does. Like, there's no cultural expectation to be part of a church in Boise.
Where we come from, you and I, in South Dakota, there's churches on every corner.
Yeah.
Right? And one of our first observations when we came out here last April, we were like, we'd be driving, we're like, have you seen a church? Like,
yeah.
There's one, I think, is it Meridian or it's Eagle, where I think it was converted into like a restaurant. It was a church that was converted into a restaurant. I can't think of what it's called right now off the top of my head, but it's right on Eagle Road. but yeah, it's definitely different out here. The further west you go from the Midwest, right? The further west you go, it definitely gets more secular.
Yeah, and with that, because you said no cultural expectations, I think also here, what's really cool is that, I mean, people can be whoever they want to be. Like in high school, like it wasn't like, oh, here's this type of people and here's like the Christians. It was like everyone was hanging out together and everyone just kind of like, because it's that kind of culture here where everyone's whatever they want to be and everyone kind of just loves everyone, for the most part. And I think that's kind of how because I've always been able to just pretty much talk to anybody about anything, no matter what group they fit into. And I always thought that was like, oh, that's just me. But you're right, that is a lot with the culture here of your neighbors are totally different than you, yet you still get along. And I think that's really cool.
What is that been like though for like faith conversations? And when people find out that you're a pastor and you lead ministry, and what does that do to the interactions where maybe people aren't as comfortable with the idea of Christianity, even just as an idea or as a faith, let alone a way of doing life?
I think there's a little bit of overlap there, because like what Kellen and I were saying, even just the knowledge of your background, I think honestly it kind of lowers the wall a little bit, because being that people know that you're it's kind of like, how vegans always tell you that they're vegan. it's like if
CrossFitters always tell you they do CrossFit.
Yes.
Yep.
If I met a vegan or a CrossFitter and they never told me that they were a vegan or a CrossFitter, and I found out through word of mouth that person is really into CrossFit and I was interested, because I know that they're not going to try and pressure me or like look at me, I'm a vegan, or I would have that like openness to be like, hey, can you tell me about this? Like, I'm seeking knowledge that you have that you've never forced on me before. So it's I think that connection is a little bit easier here.
We had a comment from Dan Rexwinkle that my wife is a vegan CrossFitter.
Oh,
See, actually, when you started talking about, I started thinking of my friends at Rexwinkle.
I'm so glad you just told us.
Because my wife and I used to do CrossFit. We did CrossFit for like a year, and we miss it. I'm
clearly not a vegan or a CrossFitter, so
I mean, I can actually vouch for the Rexwinkles though. They never like threw it in your face. You know what I mean? They were never that type. So they were actually the opposite of what you're saying, where you just didn't know until you're like, hey, want a burger? And they're like, oh, well, we actually don't eat meat. And you're like, oh, didn't know that.
Well, that's such a balance there, because, being really pushy can be off-putting. Like people don't want anything to. Dan has told us that his wife is laughing, so we're good.
Good. Okay. Good.
But you don't want to be really, really pushy. But at the same time, I think back to that video. I think it was from Penn Jillette, right? Who's a vocal atheist, talking about how he's got a lot of issues with religion and a lot of issues with Christianity. But one of the things he said is something he can appreciate is, if you're a Christian and you truly think that Jesus Christ is the only way to find wholeness, and he talks a lot about hell and eternal life and that, and if you truly believe that there's only one way to salvation, then you better tell me about it, right? Like, that'd be an expectation.
Basically, if you don't, you're the biggest jerk in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's such a balance there between being someone who being completely heartbroken for people that we work with and we do life with, and wanting to share the gospel message with them, and yet coming on so strong that no one can stand to be around us.
Yeah, it's like having the COVID-19 cure and not telling anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone would hate you right now. They're like, what, the economy tanked and we've all been locked down and I've had to live for 8 weeks with my kids?
To be clear, I don't have the cure.
And Lani didn't tell us the cure.
I barely got through high school, so...
You have science credits outstanding.
Yeah, see, so there's no way I would have...
Yeah.
But it truly is the gift, and that makes total sense. I've never really thought about that. When your heart truly breaks for other people and you have exactly what they need, why, like, you better be telling them. But that's a really interesting view from an atheist.
Mm-hmm. It's a great video. We'll have to pull it up and watch it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, we run into that all the time with interactions, right? Is we want that wholeness and that salvation and that transformation in people's lives, and yet if we like run up and are in their face about it, and even with goodness and urgency and the best of intentions, it can still put us into this category of, you're kind of weird.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, I'm not sure I even want to have a conversation with you. And yet we're called to have those conversations with people.
Yeah. So how do you break that wall and build that communication and that trust before? So it's not like a script or a process, but it's more like, I care about you enough to build this relationship with you so that I can share this gift with you. Because, in high school, I had this guy got on the lunchroom table and started screaming at everyone, "You're sinners, you're going to hell," and all this stuff. And it was interesting because half the people were like, "Oh, that is so cool." And then the other half was like, "Why are you doing this? Like, you crazy Christian, get off the table." And I was kind of in both of those categories. I was like, what, that's really cool. He's professing his faith and he's, sharing this. I just, the way he went about it was wrong, because doing that immediately breaks those burns those bridges that you could potentially have with the people that you're trying to share this with. And so it's not a script, but it is a process of, and really what all it is just loving on people, loving on people, caring about people, and not just doing it because even if you don't get to have that conversation with someone about, like, Christ and salvation, they're going to see Jesus through you. And they're going to know, like I heard this pastor say, when I interact with my wife or I interact with other people, I want them to know that I have recently spent some time with Jesus by the way that I'm treating them. And that, that's prayer in the car or, read your devotions and things like that. Like, I want people to know, like, there's something different about them and they must have recently spent time with Jesus. And that kind of has sat with me.
It reminds me of that idea of when Moses came down from the mountain, right? And people couldn't even look at his face, right? Because it was so bright with the presence and the power of God, because he had just literally been in the physical presence of God. Not just a spiritual presence, but a physical presence. And people came back and they couldn't even look at him. And I feel I've known people in my life where you meet them and you just feel the closeness of their relationship with God. I think that's powerful. That's a powerful idea that should be our desire, is not just that we're close with God, but people feel that when we're around them. Man. Dan had asked, how do you handle it when there's pushback? When those kinds of conversations with people, pushback about hearing Jesus. He says we answered his question, but anything else with that idea of pushback, though?
You kind of know when people are ready, and that they're eager to hear what you have to say. You can kind of just tell by their actions, but there is pushback. I mean, especially with like family, I've had a lot of great conversations with people who don't really, in my family, who don't normally go to church, but they're believers. And it's just like when those conversations or the opportunity arises, I think being aware of it, and then kind of also always kind of being prepared as to how if this conversation ever happens, how am I prepared? How is this going to look? How do I want to come off? Because if someone's like, "Hey, tell me about Jesus," and you've never thought about this, you're not gonna know what to say. But when there is pushback, it all just falls back on, I'm gonna love on you no matter what. You're not ready to have a conversation. That's fine. I'm still gonna do what I'm doing, and I still love you.
Well, and I think it's key too that, excuse me, like even if they, whether it's a flat out rejection of what you're saying or, they don't necessarily, accept Christ in the moment that you're having a conversation. I think it's key to still continue, like you were just saying, to continue to love them regardless, of whatever their beliefs are. Because for all 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, they'll have another conversation with somebody.
Right.
Maybe something will happen in their life or, whatever it might be. And the last thing you want is to be that person who 10 years down the road, they'll be like, when they're somebody's like, how come you're not a Christian? Well, I knew this guy Lani back in the day.
Yeah.
That's the last, that's the last thing you want to be is that person,
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think it's just continuing to love them. When I've received pushback, Dan, I just continue to try to love them just how I did before the conversation.
Right.
Try to treat them the same as I had before as I am after that conversation because, yeah, you just never know, But
Yeah. There's an old, when I was a pastor, me and this other pastor would go every Thursday. We'd go to like nursing homes and things like that. They called it calling, like they're going to go calling. I don't know why they call it that, but we'd go to like nursing homes. We'd go to elderly people in the church who can't make it to services, and we just like pray with them and stuff. And it was a great time. We led a lot of people to Christ and to renew their relationship with Christ as well. But one thing that's really funny, and a way that you will most likely never get any pushback, is he called it wake up evangelism. So I don't know if you've ever woken up an old person, but when you wake up an old person, they're kind of not fully awake, and they will listen to everything you say. And so if you ever really just need to get something across to someone, just wake them up and then just start praying with them. That's the best. That's the best advice I have for you.
That is...
I've never heard this.
I have so many thoughts and yet no words.
Yeah. Wake up evangelism. Copyrighted.
Wow.
Oh, that is...
Man.
It's kind of like whenever somebody's on
awesome.
a phone. When someone's on a phone and you hand them something, they will always grab what you're handing them, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And they don't know why.
I'm really bad about that. Like, you can hand me things and take things away when I'm talking, and I don't notice. It's a game my wife plays. So she see how many things she can switch out of my hands. Like, all of a sudden, I'll go from holding, like, my phone and my keys to, like, holding her purse and a coffee mug, and I will have, where did these things come from?
That is great. I need to try. I've never done it.
We had a suggestion from Dan. He says, get them to go on a Costas trip. They can build stuff, and God will creep all up in them without them even noticing.
This is a weird question, but have you guys ever, from a male's point of view, have you guys ever just, like, really wanted to, like, dig a hole?
Yes.
Or, like, build something?
Yes.
Like that?
It's not just dudes.
Erica,
Dude,
my wife is offended. She's like, it's not just dudes.
Well, girl,
we like it too.
Yeah, like, so that's definitely a bonding agent. Hey, you want to build something? We'll dig some holes.
I went out at 11:30, like 3 nights ago, and trimmed our hedges in the backyard with a big pair of loppers.
See?
Just because I needed to.
I love it. When's the last time you climbed a tree?
It's been a while since I've climbed a tree, and that has less to do with my desire and more to do with my waistline.
I can't remember last time I climbed a tree, but I need to get on it.
So anyway, Casa's trip is going to be December 27th.
Shameless plug. December 27th.
December 27th to January 1st.
Where? Guatemala.
San Raimundo.
Hey, they had one more bag of Guatemalan coffee at Cafina. I bought one of them. I almost bought the second one for you. And I should have, because now I feel like a jerk.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, now you tell me about it, too.
But there's one more bag there. At least there was this afternoon.
But seriously, if you're interested in going to Guatemala to build a house for a family, we're going. We've got, I think we're at like 6 or 7 people now.
And if you've never been on any sort of trip like that, it will change your life. I can guarantee it. So if you've never done it, or if you have done it and you know the power that it has, do it.
I'm actually hoping Dan and Caroline and their family join us in Guatemala. Not even kidding.
Come on, Dan. Let's do it. You can your wife can vegan CrossFit while we're down there. It'll be good.
It's good.
My mom posted, try to dig a hole in western South Dakota. We tried to dig up some fence posts for like a chain link fence. And we tried doing it with post hole diggers. Right, and we got an inch and a half down and then just started hitting granite. Oh. So then we went and got one of those augers, right? No. And we kept like losing the auger because it would catch in the rock. We finally got him dug. Our neighbor went and tried to level up, because we lived on a hill, tried to level a part of his yard, and he got one of those big excavators, right? Jeez. And he had the diamonds cutting teeth on the end, like made for breaking rock. And I think he said he went through 3 or 4 sets of those.
Oh, geez.
Trying to level the yard. It was so bad.
Yeah, I don't think I'm strong enough to dig a hole there.
No, we dig a hole here, and it's like you just keep going. It's just dirt all the way down.
Yeah, it's like sinking sand.
Beautiful. What were we talking about?
Casas.
Casas.
Go
to Casas. It's going to be great. You can talk to Kellen. You can email him at kellen.hackett@gathering208.com, or you can email at hello@gathering208.com, and we'll get it to Kellen. So shameless plug, but that trip is going to be awesome.
And it doesn't matter where you live in the country.
Yes.
To clarify, you don't have to live in Boise or South Dakota, wherever you live.
That's right.
Okay, my plug's in. There you go.
See, that's why you sat on the couch.
Yeah.
Now I want to plug the Galatians study, because it doesn't matter where you live for that. 9 a.m. Saturday morning, Mountain Time. The link's on the Facebook page.
Yeah, join us for Bible study.
Galatians chapter 3. It'll be good. So, anyways, we're talking about living a life of ministry while working in the marketplace, and being surrounded people that are everything from like apathetic towards Christianity to outright antagonistic, right? And just trying to work through that. And so a lot of what I've heard is that what it comes back to is why is everyone dying? Everyone's dying laughing. I don't know what happened.
Trying not to, man. What?
Yeah, I know. I've got a weird speech thing. No, but what it comes down to
we're horrible humans over here.
What it comes down to is relationship, right? Building relationships with people.
Erica's got me going, man.
My wife and if you're wondering why I keep staring, my wife and Kellen are laughing at each other because I have an inability to articulate anything. Ever.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
I didn't notice.
I know, because you're nice and I like you.
No, it's because I barely got through high school. That's why.
Gosh, now I'm going to start.
No, but you were saying something interesting. You're saying, you asked earlier about the co-vocational. Mm-hmm. And after I had, surrendered my license and kind of went a different way, I started working at Maverick, which is a gas station. I don't know if you guys have them in South Dakota.
No.
But
it's kind of like a Casey's.
It was interesting because I was out of this, I was working every Sunday morning and working all the time at this church, and now my morning shift Sundays was at Maverick, and every time people would come in, there's people coming in, they're buying alcohol 9 in the morning. I'm like, go to church, it's Sunday, why are you here? Go to church. But the relationships that were able to be formed through that was really cool, because not saying the gas station people are not religious, because you can be religious in any field, but it was cool to have the connection with the people who are like, I've never gone to church. You just came from that. Like, what is it like? And then also just knowing that my personality is like, I will talk to you for about anything forever. That they just knew, like, hey, let's talk. I mean, you can talk for hours when you're stocking freezers and stuff like that. So it was interesting to kind of step out of that world and then step into the world and still be in your ministry. And that's one way that I always knew, like, I'm doing ministry no matter what it looks like. So, but you asked us earlier how we would feel about being co-vocational. Is that...
I think we were just talking about
just our thoughts on it,
what that's looked like. Since that's a reality right now.
Well, and was it a little over a year ago now when I did my my ordination interview, and they had asked a question, something along the lines of like, how many friends do you have that are not?
How many friends do you have?
How many friends do you have that are not Christian? Or that are not, or would call themselves non-Christian? And I mean, it was maybe on two hands that I could count. I was like maybe 7 or 8 people, and being co-vocational, like, working at Ocean Network, we actually talked about it one day. We were like, okay, there's this person, this person, this person.
We could count on one hand.
On one hand, how many people we knew were professing Christians, So it's like the complete opposite. And that's, 150 or so people that work there. So...
not saying that there weren't more. That's just how many we knew.
That's how many we knew. So. But, yeah, so it definitely provides different conversations. I mean, part of it was previously being on staff at a church for, 3.5 years or so, give or take. That's because I was so involved in the church, I didn't know anybody really outside of the church, So, yeah, I think that's where being co-vocational just helps you build relationships with people that aren't necessarily Christian, and that's not a bad thing to do that, Well, I think a lot of Christians are afraid to make friendships with people outside of the faith.
That was kind of an environment I had grown up in. I think it was really common in the 90s, was just this idea of you've almost got to being a good Christian to a certain degree means isolating yourself, right? And trying to, and it's the best,
like
intentions.
Not going to parties. And
and like, because I'm an idiot teenager, just like every other teenager out there, and so sometimes it's like you just got to not be around those things. But there's such a balance there, right? And I think back with our DS, Wes Smith will tell us. When we get all the pastors in our district together, he'll tell us to be interesting. And what that means is don't just lock yourself away at the church, and everything's ministry and everything's study and everything is leading your leaders and working on curriculum and preaching. And because you can spend all your time and never interact with people who are outside the church. Or never do anything in your life that's not church related. I did that for a long time. I mean, it's so easy to fall into because there's so much to do. And so he'd tell us, be interesting.
Not only there's so much to do, but you only have a week to do it.
Yeah.
So
Sunday comes awfully quick.
It does, yeah.
But just this idea of like, one, you need to have a hobby just so for your own emotional and physical health. Right, so you're not going crazy, whether that's fishing or
I was just
woodworking.
Gonna say that's why I really like fishing, because having music as a hobby and a job, it makes it, work sometimes.
Yeah, it does, because then you almost feel guilty if you're working on music that's not worship music for Sunday.
Exactly.
It's like, wow, I could be really knocking a couple things out at once here.
Yep.
But then also when we do things that are interesting, and by interesting, doing things that are outside of the world of church, it gives us an opportunity to meet people, right? I mean, there's people you meet when you go out biking or even fishing, or people you can go fishing with.
Well, and like we were going to Ironwood, to do trivia night.
Yeah.
Yep.
You meet all kinds of people when you go to
Well, and I think
trivia
some of
night on a Tuesday.
the most interesting conversations we had when we first started doing that, where people were like, "Wait, you're a church that's going to a bar to do trivia night? Like, what do you mean?" They'd never.
Where does people who like trivia?
Never even had heard of that. But we had a well-rounded team that dominated. But
at Ironwood are.
Those chicken skewer things?
Oh, the Parmesan garlic chicken
Yes.
skewers. If you have not been to Ironwood, and I know you can't go right now, but when they open up again, are they open?
Get
the Parmesan garlic chicken skewers to go. It is.
You can get it to go.
So good. That's the other.
We've been talking
plug.
about food for so long,
dude.
So much tonight.
We can talk about food all the time.
I was gonna say,
we were talking before this went on. We were talking about Chipotle.
Yeah.
And Krispy Kremes.
That's waiting for me to pick
key
up.
lime Krispy Kreme is so good.
As soon as this is over, I'm going there.
Nice.
You were saying, well, wasn't Jesus co-vocational? Was that the whole, his whole thing?
Paul made tents.
Yeah, Paul made tents, and Jesus had a carpentry background,
but he was just with the people.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, hey, come to my Sunday service. It was, I'm with the people, and that's kind of how I feel being, co-vocational. It really, really makes the people the church and not the building. I really like that, because you can do ministry wherever you are, and that's just kind of my stance. I'm not perfect at all, but
well, and that's such a powerful mindset. It's core to who we at Gathering 208 want to be. And I think that's some of the conversation we had initially is this idea of the church isn't this building or place that people get together. And I know that's something that we've been talking a lot about in the church, but also it's this idea that wherever we can gather some people together, there's church happening.
Yeah.
There can be discipleship happening. There can be life transformation happening. And that's one of the things that we're being so intentional about. Discipleship, whether that is a group of 3 to 5 or if that's one-on-one, being core to who we are.
Yeah.
Because if we bring that all the way back around to the beginning of the conversation, true worship stems out of good discipleship.
Right, exactly.
And if you don't have good discipleship happening, if you don't have life transformation happening, then worship is going to be empty.
Right.
And so while worship is an important thing, it's almost a secondary thing to discipleship, because it's a symptom of discipleship.
Yeah, exactly.
Man. So we got a couple minutes here. So why don't you tell us, Lani, about where you see the future going? I mean, if that for you personally, for worship, for what does the future look like for worship at the church and for Lani Nelson?
That's the exciting part, because I have no idea. It can literally go whatever way we decide, and then just kind of tying it into the beginning. Whatever we do, I want to make sure that authenticity is at the core of it, because being a new church, we're not going to be perfect right away. Or ever, actually.
I was like, whoa, hold on.
Man.
Let's
Give us a year to be perfect.
As long as Josh and I are on staff, we're not going to be perfect.
No, but just how can we build that atmosphere of trust, communication, in order to let the presence of God in? Because kind of what I was saying earlier, when someone's just spent some time with Jesus. Mm-hmm. How do we create that atmosphere where people don't even know? Maybe someone new to the church is here and this just feels different. Yeah, the music was great. The pastor, I don't remember what the pastor said.
No one ever does.
They gave me a weird cracker, but something feels different here.
That's communion, I'm hoping.
Yeah, communion.
We're just handing out oyster crackers as people come in.
No, but I want it to be that atmosphere where it's people can connect with God, and they might not even know that it's God, but something's happening, and so I'm excited for wherever we end up going, and how there's going to be a lot of conversations in the future about what it's going to look like. But honestly, I'm just excited to have those conversations and kind of get this rolling. Right now, with everything kind of being online, worship has been not at the forefront of what we're doing, but some online stuff is coming out, which is cool because if this whole COVID-19 thing never happened, there's things that we wouldn't have learned and that we wouldn't have in our arsenal of things that we can use in the future church. Mm-hmm. And so it's really cool just to kind of sit back, see what's happening, and just dream of the future. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what it's going to look like, but I am pretty stinking excited to find out.
I am too, and we're excited to have you on the team. It's one of those serendipitous things, and we didn't get much into even that story of how you got connected with us, because it's not like you just randomly showed up at our backyard.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing of, I can't even remember all.
It was his sister-in-law and his brother. Work with my wife.
That's right. Yeah.
His sister-in-law and my wife were having a conversation one day, and they're like, "I think Lani and Kellen would be friends."
Yeah, and then they gave you my number.
Yeah,
and you're like, "Let's go to coffee." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm here." And you're like, "I'm in the hat and I have a beard." I'm like walking in the coffee shop, and I'm like, "This is awesome.
That's the guy.
this is the future of what our life." And then it's kind of been a fun ride ever since.
Yeah. It's been an absolute blast having you part of the team and having you now in coming to staff meetings and being a core part of the leadership at Gathering 208. Looking forward to what the future is going to look like with that. We also have some online worship stuff coming up. Actually, we're doing communion this Sunday, right?
Yes.
At the team gathering. So we're going to do some acoustic worship on Sunday at 3 p.m. With the team gathering, and you can jump on the Zoom call for that, and Lani's going to be leading that. We're going to do communion together. Yep. And so for those who will be on there, don't forget, get your communion elements together for that. Bible study also, once again, plug Galatians chapter 3, 9 a.m. on Saturday. But man, it's been awesome.
Yeah,
been awesome conversation. Been good to have you. Good to have you in part of the crew. But if you have any questions, I'm not going to see them for probably 40 to 5 seconds to a minute. So we'll probably be off by then. But for those of you who are part of the conversation, thanks for being here. And man, we're looking forward to having Lani up on a stage and leading people in worship soon. But in the meantime, we'll do it virtually, and so you can join us there. My wife is doing weird hand signs, but it's behind her computer. I can't even see them. So anyways, whatever. We're excited to have a part of the crew. And hey, I hope all of you have a great week and join us next week for the podcast. But we'll see you then.
See you, everybody.